These films weren't just box office disasters, they were full-blown financial nightmares no one expected. Number 4 wasted over $100 million despite an Oscar-winning star, while number 9 blew $200,000 flying the director's private jet during production, only to become one of the biggest flops in history. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has been an unstoppable box office juggernaut until the Marvels happened in 2023. For the first time, the MCU faced a real flop. With a measly $65 million opening, it was the lowest in the franchise's history. Even though it wasn't the total disaster some fans on the internet made it out to be, it still lost Disney a whopping $237 million. Rumor has it that behind-the-scenes drama played a big part in this. Director Nia DaCosta was reportedly MIA during post-production, leaving Marvel Studios to patch things up. Samuel L. Jackson, aka Nick Fury, even admitted he had no clue what was happening with the MCU anymore. After the Avengers saga, everyone expected Robert Downey Jr. to pick another smash hit, but Dolittle ended up being the first big flop of 2020. With a budget of $175 million and an all-star voice cast, this CGI-heavy film about a doctor who talks to animals needed to make $500 million just to break even. It didn't even come close. Dolittle barely grossed half that, and the production issues didn't help. Universal ordered extensive reshoots after negative test screenings, and Downey's quirky, improvised performance clashed with the family-friendly tone. The CGI was an editing nightmare, and the whole thing turned into a chaotic mess that nobody could fix. Stealth had all the makings of a summer blockbuster. A-list stars, a $138 million budget, and enough special effects to make your head spin. But when it hit theaters, it nosedived, losing at least $56 million. Director Rob Cohen later admitted they rushed the film into production, thinking Jamie Foxx's post-Ray fame would carry it. Spoiler, it didn't. Fox had already won an Oscar by the time Stealth came out, and critics weren't shy about saying his talent was wasted on a film that cared more about flashy effects than a solid story. Cohen later reflected, "It was a film of its time, but maybe that time came too soon." Will Smith as Muhammad Ali should have been a slam dunk, right? Not so much. Ali might have earned Smith his first Oscar nomination, but Sony was left with a $100 million headache. Director Michael Mann's decision to relocate filming to Africa sent the budget spiraling to $118 million. But despite the film's ambitions, it only made $87.8 million worldwide. Jamie Foxx, who played Ali's cornerman, later joked about how intense the filming was. Thanks to Mann's notorious perfectionism, it was like they were really in the ring. Sadly, Ali was knocked out at the box office. In 2003, Brad Pitt and Catherine Zeta-Jones teamed up for DreamWorks' animated Sinbad. You'd think with a cast like that, it'd be smooth sailing, but nope. The movie bombed, losing $125 million and forcing DreamWorks to give up on traditional 2D animation altogether. Brad Pitt later admitted he wasn't comfortable with voice acting, and it showed. Sinbad became one of those films that not even star power could save, and it marked the end of an era for hand-drawn animation at DreamWorks. Colin Farrell as Alexander the Great sounded epic on paper, but Alexander turned out to be a $71 million flop. Critics ripped into Farrell's portrayal, and some countries even threatened to sue Oliver Stone over the film's historical inaccuracies. In Greece, people were especially mad about the way the movie handled Alexander's sexuality. Stone's take on the legendary conqueror sparked outrage, and the movie had to be re-edited multiple times. Stone even released a final cut years later, but by then, the damage was done. Jackie Chan, fresh off his Rush Hour success, plus Arnold Schwarzenegger in his final acting role before becoming governor, sounds like a hit. But Around the World in 80 Days was anything but. The film lost millions, making only $72 million worldwide on a $110 million budget. Schwarzenegger later called his cameo just for fun, and rumors say it was a favor to Jackie Chan. But not even Chan's star power could save this adventure film from tanking at the box office, and it ended up putting a damper on Disney's plans for more live-action adventure films. The 2006 Poseidon remake tried to ride the wave of big-budget disaster films, but capsized in the process. losing a hefty $69 million. The production was plagued by technical delays. Apparently, filming underwater isn't as easy as it looks. Director Wolfgang Petersen, who struck gold with The Perfect Storm, later admitted he had second thoughts about diving into another water-themed movie. Gene Hackman, the star of the original Poseidon adventure, was asked to cameo but wisely declined. Sahara wasn't just a flop, it was a full-blown production nightmare. With $78 million in losses, it's still infamous for going wildly over budget, ballooning to $160 million thanks to costly reshoots and out-of-control expenses. The cherry on top? A $200,000 bill just to transport the director's private jet. Matthew McConaughey, who was fully invested in the project, later called it a passion project gone wrong in his memoir. Here's one for the history books. Evan Almighty, the most expensive comedy ever made, with a jaw-dropping $175 million budget. But instead of floating to success, it sank, losing $50 million. The ark-building scenes and CGI animals were the culprits behind that bloated budget, with Steve Carell joking that filming felt like the most stressful summer camp of all time. Critics had a field day with the costs, dubbing it Noah's Titanic, and while Carell and Morgan Freeman gave it their all, this comedy just couldn't cash in on its big ideas. Martin Scorsese's Hugo was supposed to be a cinematic love letter, but instead, it was a financial disaster, losing an estimated $80 million. The project's heavy reliance on 3D tech and special effects inflated the budget by an additional $80 million. Despite all that, Hugo went on to earn 11 Oscar nominations, winning 5. It's now considered a masterpiece by cinephiles, but at the time, it was a rare miss for Scorsese at the box office. One insider even quipped that Scorsese's vision may have been too niche for mainstream audiences, proving that even legends aren't bulletproof. It's hard to believe now, but back in 2011, Green Lantern was one of the most hyped movies of the year. Superhero movies were on fire after the success of Iron Man and The Dark Knight. But Green Lantern? It fizzled out hard. With a massive $200 million budget, the movie barely limped across the finish line, leaving Warner Brothers with a staggering $75 million loss. Pan was the movie nobody really asked for. In 2015, this Peter Pan reimagining landed with a thud, despite Hugh Jackman's star power. Between its dodgy casting choices and the over-the-top CGI, it was doomed from the start. The studio lost up to $150 million, which is pretty brutal for a movie with such a familiar story. Johnny Depp, Anne Hathaway, and a sequel to $1 billion Alice in Wonderland. This should have been a sure thing, right? It wasn't the case, though. The movie crashed and burned in 2016, losing Disney an estimated $70 million. The first movie made over $1 billion. So what happened? Maybe it was sequel fatigue, or maybe audiences just weren't as enchanted by this trip down the rabbit hole. Whatever it was, Disney felt the sting. Even Steven Spielberg can't win them all. His 2016 adaptation of Roald Dahl's The BFG was a major misfire, losing at least $90 million. The story of a big friendly giant and his young human friend had all the makings of a family classic, but it just didn't connect with audiences. With a $140 million budget, it became one of Spielberg's biggest financial flops, proving that even legends can stumble. Justice League should have been a slam dunk for DC, a superhero team-up with a star-studded cast and massive hype behind it. But somehow, it lost Warner Brothers somewhere between $50 and $100 million in 2017. With a staggering $300 million budget, Justice League was supposed to be DC's answer to the Avengers. Instead, it became a cautionary tale of production gone wrong. Original director Zack Snyder stepped down during post-production due to a family tragedy, leaving Joss Whedon to take over and drastically alter the film's tone. Cast members, including Ray Fisher, later accused Whedon of abusive behavior on set. Disney's Wrinkle in Time was supposed to be a game-changer, a visually stunning, star-studded adaptation of the beloved novel. Directed by Ava DuVernay and featuring Oprah, Reese Witherspoon, and Mindy Kaling, the film had everything going for it. But it tanked. With a budget of $103 million, Disney reportedly lost between $86 million and $186 million. Despite DuVernay being the first woman of color to direct a live-action film with a budget over $100 million, the film couldn't connect with audiences. The clunky CGI, erratic tone, and mixed critical reception didn't help either. You'd think Star Wars films are bulletproof at the box office, but Solo proved otherwise. Despite grossing over $392 million worldwide, it still lost an estimated $76 million. Solo had everything going for it, but production drama derailed it from the start. Original directors Phil Lord and Christopher Miller were fired mid-production, and Ron Howard was brought in to reshoot about 70% of the film, inflating the budget to $275 million. Throw in franchise fatigue, and the result was a box office disaster that no one saw coming. The 2019 adaptation of the hit musical was supposed to be a holiday box office hit, but it turned into a legendary flop, with losses estimated between $71 and $113 million. This CGI-fueled fever dream cost $95 million to make, but left audiences cringing in their seats. The rushed CGI was so bad that the studio had to release an updated version with improved effects after the initial release. Even then, the film's unsettling mix of human faces and cat bodies became the stuff of nightmares. Even Andrew Lloyd Webber, the musical's creator, hated it so much he got a dog to cope with his disappointment. A King Arthur movie seems like a guaranteed hit, right? But not this time. Guy Ritchie's 2017 take on the legendary tale was a colossal flop, losing an estimated $150 million. It had a budget of $175 million, but only pulled in $148 million worldwide. What went wrong? Maybe it was the lack of star power or the chaotic reshoots, but whatever the reason, King Arthur fell off his throne before he ever really had a chance to sit on it.